costs. Go ahead.
How about a reverse mortgage for the sole survivor?
Reverse mortgage is fine. I mean, my opinion, should I offer my opinions? Reverse mortgage is a good thing to do if it's the only thing that allows you to stay in the house and you otherwise can't stay in there. Outside of that, I wouldn't do it. But if it's the only thing that allows you to stay in the house, then it makes sense. All right, so go ahead. No questions from you. No soup for you.
What happens if you want to sell the house and move in that 5-year period?
You can certainly sell the house and move in the 5-year period. It's just that all of you have to sell. Generally what happens in that case, the kids deed back their piece to you and your spouse sell, so there's no capital gains. But you can certainly sell. After 5 years, your kids earn credit. So if you want to parse out some of the assets to them and they've been on there for 5 years, you can do it without picking up another 5-year disqualification period. Okay.
What happens if any of these situations are less than 5 years?
It's just the clock is ticking. Less than 5 years, somebody has to go in, spousal couple. We put it back into the name of the spouse. The other spouse is not going in. And as I said, you haven't lost anything. You just haven't gained what you otherwise would have. Okay?
Could you go back and clarify the 3 days in the hospital before you go into a...
All right. It's,
how does that all work out?
it just means if you go directly from the house to a nursing home, they won't take you unless you pay for at least 30 days. If you come from a hospital after a 3-day stay and go to a nursing home and it looks like you're going to stay in there, Medicare will cover the first 20 days and they may cover up to the first part of the first 100 days.
And that stay in the hospital, isn't there something about being admitted rather than just hanging around an emergency room for 3 days or something like that?
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
No observation.
You know what? You guys are probably more familiar with that than me. But I know that as the rule. All right. Go ahead.
Could you, when you talk, elaborate on the downside transfers and cure mechanism? You know, if you get stuck in that.
All right. Gentleman asked about transfers and cures. All right. Any transfer that you make that's sizable at all, which is basically above $1,000, theoretically picks up a 5-year disqualification period. So say you give your son $200,000 2 years ago, and then you have to go to a nursing home. Because you've made that transfer and it's within 5 years, if in order for you to qualify, they'd have to give the money back, which means you probably wouldn't qualify because now you got $200,000. I guess the point of that whole thing is any transfers that you're going to do, whether it's a real estate transfer to an irrevocable trust or a life estate, or whether it's a monetary transfer, has to be done 5 years prior. And like I say, this is something I get all the time. It's like, my mother's going into a nursing home like 3 weeks from now. Can't she give us each $14,000? It's an estate tax equation. It's not for nursing home stuff. That picks up a disqualification period. It's a transfer.
But there's a mechanism that they call cure that.
Curing just means giving the stuff back. So of course they allow it. The only problem is instead of now having no assets, you have $200,000. You have to use that $200,000 for your care.
What caution would you give to a client in selecting a trustee in an irrevocable trust?
Well, it shouldn't be themselves. Mass Health frowns on it. It'll make the trust fail probably. It should be a child that you trust. That's generally who we have do it, a child or children. Go ahead.
Does the nursing home have the right to exclude you because you are inclined to be in an area where you're safe, but you're also fine with the right environment? Can they exclude you because you are not a private payer and you hid your money, and so therefore you really don't have the opportunity that wealthy people do for themselves?
Well, I mean, we're not talking about hiding money. We're talking about legitimate transfers. By the way, it's not the nursing home. The nursing home is only the puppet of the state. It's the state who makes the determination. The state pays the nursing home.
We always hear that the nursing home takes private payers before they'll take.
It's easier to get in as a private pay patient, but if you otherwise qualify, you can certainly get in as a Medicaid pending. Okay? Go ahead.
Could you tell us, those of us that have trusts, what new laws, federal and state laws, have come down regarding trusts, and whether these laws are such that we should go to our attorneys and renew our trusts?
The question is, are there new laws in relation to trusts? Nothing major as far as I can see. Okay? Nothing major as far as I can see. Nothing in the last couple of years.
Revocable trust. If one of the husband or wife dies, what happens to the cars if they're in separate names?
Husband and wife, cars are an interesting thing because they often get caught up in what I call mini probates. But basically, through the RMV, Registry of Motor Vehicles, even if a title's only in one spouse's name, there's a form where you can switch it to the surviving spouse.
You wouldn't put it under the cars under the irrevocable?
I generally don't, no, not irrevocable trust, unless you got a car that's not going to die. No. Generally don't put cars in trusts. All right, so I'm going to move on because I don't want to speak for too long to actions that we can take to try to do the best we can. All right. So I'm going to recommend that people do this, and many people probably have these things. People should make these decisions not under the gun, not when they're dying, not when they're going into the nursing home, when the spouse is going into a nursing home. Generally, one last thing I'll say about homestead. People think that if they have a homestead on their house, the house is protected against nursing home costs. Trust me, something that you get at the Registry of Deeds for $10, it's now $37. It's not going to protect you for hundreds of thousands of dollars in nursing home costs. People think if they have an asset in a living trust is protected from a nursing home cost. That's not the case. All right. Everybody should have what I call a core estate plan. Those are the legal documents that pre-speak for any situation that can come up if you pass away, you become legally disabled. There's actually 5 of those documents, 2 that are financially based, 3 that are medically based. 2 that are financially based, first one's a will. When I die, this is where I want my stuff to go. There's always lots of reasons to have a will. There's no reason not to have a will. You may have an asset in your name alone. It reinforces your wishes when you die. If a person becomes legally disabled and can't make financial decisions, somebody would have to go to probate court and get what's called a conservatorship, which is an ordeal. It's very simply solved by having a valid, durable power of attorney, which is a document that says, hey, if I'm legally disabled, I appoint my wife, my son, my daughter to act on my behalf, so that if you become legally disabled, they can make financial decisions for you, and you don't have to go to probate court and get a guardianship, conservatorship. The 3 medically based documents are like the durable power of attorney, but they're for healthcare proxies. They're for healthcare reasons. Healthcare proxy is a legal appointment of an agent to make healthcare decisions if you can't make it yourself. Without a valid healthcare proxy, somebody would have to go to probate court to get a guardianship. There should never be a reason in the world why an ordinarily functioning person who's now not functioning so well should ever have to get a guardianship or a conservatorship if they do a little due diligence. In Massachusetts, just because you have a health care proxy, the medical institution doesn't have to act in any particular fashion. Companion documents called a living will. And what a living will is a statement from you yourself that if you're vegetative comatose, no chance of recovery, that you wouldn't want to be kept alive artificially. I don't know if you remember that lady in Florida, Terry Schiavo. What the story was there is she had a health care proxy naming the husband, but she had no living will. So the medical institution said, fine, we see you're the agent, but where does it say this is what she wants to do? And that's why that was such an ordeal, and that's why those documents go together. As if that wasn't enough, the federal government passed something called HIPAA in 2003, Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act. All right? So now medical institutions are hesitant to give records to agents because they're afraid they're going to violate these privacy provisions. So now we do a HIPAA release that basically says, hey, if my agent needs access to my records, I'm authorizing him or her to have access to those records. Between those 5 documents, there's virtually no situation that can come up if you pass away, you become legally disabled for health or financial purposes that you haven't pre-spoken for. All right, other documents are things that might be helpful. We talked about living trusts. If we're concerned about estate taxes, estate over $1 million, spousal couple. We talked about life estate, protection for the real estate. for spousal couple or single individual. What else we got? Irrevocable trust, if you have the assets to put aside and not use, and if the irrevocable trust is written correctly and won't be challenged by Mass Health. What other documents we got? I think that's about it. So I've spoken for a long time. It's 5 to 10. If anybody has any last-minute questions, maybe we'll go to 10, make it a nice even round number. And by the way, I'll be available after the program for any questions or concerns. But if anybody wants to ask any now.
One common thing that I've heard is that when it's best time to apply, well, let's say Mass Health, you have let's say a single parent in a nursing home, and they have resources and they've been paying private pay. At some point, let's say, they have $200,000, that's going down every month.
Right.
And knowing the length of time it takes.
Well, number one, it's not the length of time. The question is, when's the best time to apply for Mass Health if you're a private pay patient? I usually tell people to come see a lawyer, an elder law attorney, when they're down to about $25,000, $30,000. Here's the thing, is they won't qualify till they're actually below $2,000. Now, if they're below $2,000 as of August 1st, and you don't apply till September 1st, they can still go back retroactively as long as they're below the magic 2,000 figure. Or if on July 1st you know they're going to be down below 2,000 as of September 1st, you can apply July 1st, knowing that they're going to be down below 2,000 as of September 1st.
Yeah, but if a nursing home is going to send you a bill, let's say.
You tell them that your Medicaid, nursing home sends a bill. I'm freaking out because the nursing home sent me a $15,000 bill. You tell the nursing home, I'm Medicaid pending. I've got a lawyer, an organization working on this for me. They understand that. They understand it. It's not a problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that there's something that you can do now to reduce your required minimum distributions when you're over 70 and a half. There's something new out there now. If you take $125,000 and put it into an annuity and it pays at 85, you don't have to take that required.
All right. I mean, that's a specific situation, which I think I'd be happy to address after the program. I don't know how relevant it is.
I don't know that a lot of people know that
Okay.
now.
Okay. Go ahead.
I find that one of the assets that causes sometimes a lot of probate is a motor vehicle. Husband or wife should almost always title the car in two names.
You can do that. You can do that. As I said, there's a form with RMV that if you have a deceased spouse, you can get the car switched over. I think I'm going to end now because I think we've covered the bulk of what we needed to cover.